Buried for 30 years, The Curse and the Returner in the Desert. Chapter 1. The Lone Watcher in the Blazing Wasteland. The throat of Takla was a crimson purgatory, utterly abandoned by the gods. The scorching sun boiled the air until it twisted and shimmered. The horizon wavered violently in the heat. The rolling dunes rose like the backs of slumbering golden-scaled beasts, silent and deadly, devouring every soul foolish enough to step inside. Sand and wind were its eternal rulers, time its cruelest executioner. Even hours cracked and solidified in the unbearable heat. Here, life was a word too extravagant to speak. No one could believe that deep within the sea of death bloomed a touch of green that defied all laws of heaven and earth. A low, tough straw hut, its walls plastered with mud and dry grass, stood firm against the burning days and freezing nights. Beside it grew an ancient poplar tree, solitary and unyielding, its massive canopy spread like a giant umbrella, carving shade into 100 steps of scorched earth. Its leaves glowed green as polished jade, thriving without water or soil, as if battling some invisible force. 80-year-old Nora sat at the edge of the shadow like a weathered wooden sculpture carved by wind and sand. Wrinkles covered her face, sand, 30 years old, wedged beneath her nails. Her eyes had once shone like stars, but now were veiled by a cloudy film, a metal carved by storms and years, and the mark of a sealed secret. Every evening, when the sun dyed the dunes a tragic blood red, she stopped grinding spices and stared into the distance. She was waiting for someone long buried by sandstorms, forgotten by time. 30 years ago, a black sandstorm that blotted out the sky swallowed a prosperous oasis and took all her love and hope. From that day on, she became a living dead woman guarding a curse, withering slowly in endless solitude. She did not know that this silent wasteland was about to welcome a breaker of fate. At the edge of the horizon, a dark spot was slowly drawing near. Chapter 2. The Wanderer Who Broke the Silence. Nora had thought her life would fade like a grain of sand, silent and unmarked, until that dark spot floated and sank in the burning air, growing larger by the second. For 30 years, he was the first living intruder. The young man was ragged and stumbling, a dry branch broken by the gale, until he collapsed heavily beneath the poplar's shade. His lips were cracked like parched earth, his breath faint, one step away from being devoured by the desert. Nora rose slowly, her movements slow but eerily calm. She scooped a bowl of water from her clay pot, her most precious treasure in this forbidden land. A drop fell on the young man's cracked lips, a glimmer of light that pulled him back from the edge of death. He opened his eyes. His gaze was sharp, not like a dying traveler. "Old woman, how do you survive in this place of death?" His voice was rough as sandpaper. Nora said nothing, only pointed behind her. There lay a tiny green pool, dark and bottomless, with colorful koi swimming gently, a sealed spring of life. "As long as fire burns in the heart, the desert cannot burn out life," she said softly, with undercurrents no one could read. The young man stayed, calling himself Arjun. He was quiet and diligent, mending the hut, tending the goats, never asking questions. But each night, when the oil lamp dimmed and Nora dozed, Arjun opened his falcon-like eyes and locked onto her every move. He was no passerby. He came for the secret. He was waiting for the moment that came once every 30 years, the moment that would overturn everything. Chapter 3. A Glimpse into the Secret Realm. On the afternoon of the third day, the desert's yang energy peaked, illusions bloomed, and the curse stirred most violently. Nora slung a basket over her shoulder and gripped her wooden cane. Her tone was cold as sand. I'm going to gather herbs in the back hills. Do not follow. The sand there eats people. Arjun bowed in agreement, but the moment she vanished around the dune, he silently chased after her. The deeper he followed, the colder his fear grew. The bent old woman moved as lightly as a swallow, no trace of age. The sand beneath her feet seemed to lift her forward. Over a giant dune towering like a tower, Arjun froze, his breath catching in his throat. Deep within the drought-stricken desert lay an impossibly lush forest. Tall trees pierced the clouds, wide leaves blocked the sun, sealing out all heat. Moisture sweetened the air, flowers scented the wind. A realm that defied nature, a barrier guarded tightly by a curse. The old woman walked to the forest's heart, where an emerald pond glowed in the light. She slowly slipped off her rough robe, revealing her thin back, then dived into the water as lightly as a bird returning to its nest. Hiding behind huge leaves, Arjun held his breath, his heart pounding. A soft, awe-inspiring silver light burst from the water, moonlight fallen at midday. Moments later, a figure emerged. It was not the 80-year-old woman. It was a young woman of breathtaking beauty. Her hair fell like a waterfall. Her skin glowed like porcelain. Sorrow and longing filled her eyes, enough to move the world. She sat by the pool, tears sliding soundlessly, rippling the surface. "Aman, 30 years. Have you long turned to dust or forgotten my face?" That soft call was a key, unlocking a truth buried for half a lifetime. Chapter 4. The Bloodstain of the Curse. Arjun in the grass trembled violently. The name Aman was a spell that tore away all his disguises in an instant. The young woman before him was the wife he had searched for his entire life. 30 years ago, they were the most envied couple in the oasis. Her name was Nora, his Aman. But at the sweetest moment, fate bared its fangs. While herding goats, Nora accidentally wandered into a forbidden tomb and disrupted the dark witch's secret altar, where she preserved her youth with evil magic. Enraged, the witch's face aged instantly. Her curse pierced the sky, every word bleeding. "You shall be torn in the crack of time. By day you shall age and wither. Only at dusk shall you regain your youth in this pool. Unless your husband recognizes your shifting eyes amid 10,000 grains of sand and sinks into the pool to die with you, you shall live forever, never aging, never dying, trapped in loneliness, watching seas turn to fields." The curse fell. A sandstorm erupted. The oasis was buried. His lover vanished. Aman searched madly for 30 years. He traded with a Western illusionist, spending most of his lifespan to force a young face, just to enter this forbidden death forest, open only to the young. This young man, calling himself Arjun, was none other than Aman, who had crossed half a lifetime, changed his face, and wandered all the deserts to find his wife. Chapter 5. The Ultimate Recognition in the Soul. Dusk neared its end. The forest's light shook uneasily. Nora shuddered. A biting decay surged from the marrow of her bones. Her fingertips dried quickly. Her black hair turned white inch by inch. Wrinkles crawled back across her face visibly. She panicked, scrambling for her robe on the shore. "I must go before I become that ugly thing again." "Nora!" A hoarse, trembling shout cut through the forest's silence. Nora froze and turned slowly. The young man she thought a stranger was walking into the light. "No! Stay away! Don't look at me!" She covered her face in shame, crow's feet spreading at her eyes. Aman did not retreat one step. He stepped before her, his gaze gentle enough to melt the entire desert, yet firm as steel. He reached a shaking hand and gently covered her fading, clouded eyes. "I never searched for you in your skin," he choked. 30 years ago, we exchanged souls before the gods. Even if you wore dead wood, I would know the sound of your heart. Nora, I was 30 years late, but I never stopped." The aged woman whispered tremblingly, "Aman, is it really you?" "It's me." Aman clasped her bark-like hand and pointed to the green pool, his voice steady and resolute. "The curse says, only when the recognized sink together shall the chains break. This time, we never leave each other." Chapter 6. Eternal Rebirth. The setting sun was about to sink below the dunes, the curse's weakest moment, their last chance. "Do you really mean it? The bottom of the pool may not be rebirth. It may be eternal nothingness." Nora looked at his young, borrowed face, tears of grief spilling. Aman smiled and kissed her forehead, just like that gentle afternoon 30 years ago. "An eternity without you is the deepest hell." They held each other tightly, not glancing back at the desert that had devoured 30 years of their youth, and leaped into the deep pool. The water was no longer water, but countless warm dots of light, flooding their bodies, washing away the curse tangled in their bones for half a lifetime. Those black, poisonous threads of spellbinding, the moment Aman touched her, melted like snow in fire, gone without a trace. When they emerged again, the strange forest had vanished. Only a clear spring glowed under the moonlight. Beside the spring stood a young couple. Nora's eyes were bright and lively, Aman strong and heroic. The vicissitudes of half a lifetime washed away, leaving only the sincerity and passion of first sight. The curse was broken. The dark witch would never understand. True love was not possession of a face. It was the fate-bound connection between souls, able to recognize each other precisely across years, through withering and glory. Chapter 7. Echoes of the Oasis Legend. At dawn the next day, the first rays spread over the crimson desert. The ancient poplar still flourished, but beneath it no longer stood the lonely old woman and the silent wanderer. Aman and Nora stood side by the spring. They chose to stay. Once a cursed land, it now sprouted new life because of true love. They healed lost travelers with herbs, quenched thirsty souls with spring water, turning a sea of death into a land of hope. As years passed, the spring grew wider, finally forming an oasis that sand could never bury. Later, among traveling caravans, a myth spread quietly. Deep in the heart of the throat of Takla lived a pair of forever young guardians. If you lost your soul or your unfulfilled longing on the journey, you would see that green poplar. It would tell you a truth buried by yellow sand for 30 years. Wind and sand can wear away rocks. Time can fade beauty. But recognition deep in the soul can bloom eternal spring from the ashes.